and Mary Moriarty. Not
Yes.
going up this time.
Yes.
Meg McGrath Smith, yes. Michael Falsetti. Did you raise your hands to say aye? Okay,
He's
good.
still on mute.
You are muted now. And then Chris Gothier
Yes.
and Maribel Ortiz.
Yes.
Oh, and Helene Busby joined us too. Helene Busby, we're just approving the minutes from the last meeting. You can abstain or you can vote yes or no.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, we're gonna jump into the FY24 applications calendar. And I'm gonna share my screen just a minute to show that. Okay, so this is a working document, and this is something the Historic Commission has in front of them too. I'm gonna make this larger so folks can see it easier. So effectively, eligibility applications are going online August 2023. And then we're trying to figure out like what's our flow for the year. So here's what we're thinking right now. September, all applicants will complete the eligibility application by September 15th. This is the simple document where they just give a very brief description of the project. And it gives us a way of being able to initially help people understand if their project outright doesn't seem to fit within one of the three, approved categories, or doesn't seem to fit something that's like in the approved categories for CPA. And then the CPC admin will email applicants by October 6th concerning their project's eligibility. Last year, what we did in order to improve communication between ourselves and the city solicitor is that we also brought in the city solicitor really early on, including those eligibility applications. And then the entire process that went through the Historic Commission and the reports that came out of that were also shared with the city solicitor. So I think that's a good, it worked this year in a way that in previous years there had been issues. And so that's something that we wove back into what we're hoping to continue doing this year.
Okay.
So in November, this is a little bit different. This year, we had folks go to the October Historic Commission meeting. But the feedback from applicants was that they felt like there was not enough space in between when they got, confirmation that their project was eligible. And then they felt like they had like 2 weeks to pull together this like massive, kind of almost a full application at that point, because they have to have a lot of information about their property, about the scope of work, etc. So folks felt a little crushed. It also meant that communication had to fly really quickly between applicants and us and the Historic Commission. And that just put a lot of pressure on a lot of folks to be on and be responsive really quickly and available very quickly at a significant rate. So sort of slowing the process down a little bit, and instead having applicants who are applying in the historic category attend the November Historic Commission meeting. They will share the historic significance of the property or any items in question, share the scope of work, including any detailed planning documents. And then from that, we're hoping to use the same process last year to have an outside vendor then attend the presentations and create a neutral report back to the Historic Commission and the city solicitor that can be used also in support of if a project is eligible or not. And if the work itself is also going to fall within the standards required by the Department of the Interior. It's also going to help us figure out whether a PR is required and what does that mean for that project, and start those conversations early. December, applicants would submit their full application by a mid-September, December deadline that we have to speak to our staffer, Amy, about what is the right date for her in there. And then in January, they'll present their projects at a public meeting mid-January. Some years we've done that as 2 meetings. Some years we've done it as 1. The year that we did it as 1, it was like a 5-hour meeting, and it was crushing, but it was 1 day. When we split it into 2, then you have like 2 back-to-back 2-hour meetings, which can feel like a lot, but in some ways easier than having to do 1 soul-crushingly long presentation meeting. So I definitely want that feedback from the committee on that for what they would prefer in January, 1 meeting versus 2. Some years we've done the January meetings back to back, like a Tuesday and a Wednesday, or a Wednesday and a Thursday. Some years we've split it by week. So it's like a Wednesday and then also the following Wednesday. So that's a question for the committee as well, that I think we should resolve in talking through this calendar. And then February to April, we're just in the back and forth with contract development with city council and moving through that process and then getting into the preservation restriction. So nothing has changed there between this year and last year. And then May and beyond is very much stuff that Amy is crazy owning around invoices, around displaying CPC signage, official reports, all of that stuff. Okay, so I just want to open it up for discussion so that we can sort of make any shifts that we need to make on the calendar. And then just, I'd love to hear the committee's preferences for how you want certain things to be scheduled. Chris?
We just know the historical commission needs to be more involved. I think we're going to be the first step in the process. And I think we've been very lackadaisical with assistance. And everybody's agreed. We kind of, we need to guide them through the whole process to be ready for you.
Mm-hmm. And there were some folks, I'm not quite sure how much the entire committee knows this, but there were some folks who had initially done an eligibility application last time that did not complete a final application. And they were very explicit about the fact that they didn't complete it because they felt like there wasn't enough guidance.
Exactly.
Or just the turnaround was not appropriate. It was too short a time frame to have the information that the Historic Commission needs in order to be able to give the advice that they want to be able to provide.
Different year. We're going to do it. This year is going to be different.
Any thoughts beyond that about scheduling, about if certain things need to be named, like do we want to have 2 January meetings in terms of the public presentations or 1? And then how do we want to schedule those in January? Michael? No, I can't hear you, Michael. Michael, do you want to try leaving the meeting and coming back in and seeing if your audio works a second time? Amy?
Yes.
I don't know. He's written Amy on a piece of paper and held it up to the camera.
Okay. I don't know what I can do for you, Michael, but if you put something in the chat, I can call you, but I think Meg's suggestion is the best one. Just to
try first leaving the meeting and coming back in and seeing if your audio resets.
It sounds like he can't even hear us.
Can you hear us at all, Michael? Yes, he can.
Okay.
Michael, you also have the option, by the way, if you click your audio, like right next to where it has the mute icon, if you click the up arrow, you'll see that you also have the option to do what's called switch to phone audio, and it will let you call in on your phone into the meeting. Because sometimes my computer, like I've done that before in a meeting where suddenly for whatever reason my computer audio wasn't working and I had to just call in from my phone. So you could try that too. Okay, other thoughts about the calendar for the year? And Michael, feel free to type in the chat too, because I can always just speak it out, whatever you write.
I think 2 things. The eligibility application in August. Do you know what date it's gonna open up?
That's an Amy question. Amy, when is the eligibility application going to be available in August?
I can put it up, as soon as possible. I'll try to do it this week or next. So yeah.
I think they're due September 15th. So I think getting it out.
I'll do it before the 15th, so they'll have a full month.
Yeah, that's all. I just want to make sure there's enough turnaround time. I mean, and if it's an initial preliminary eligibility application, it shouldn't be too long. I mean, I know information. Okay, great. Okay. So
yeah, and I also email that to people I know who have, applied before, who are interested, and the different city departments. So they're all aware.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, any other questions or preferences?
This actually, I was talking to somebody who's a community member who was looking for these types of grants, and How is like CPA and CDBG, maybe CDBG, a whole other programs I want to talk about that actually. How is like CPA advertised to potential applicants?
Yeah, a lot of it is the website. Once the eligibility application is up, I'm happy, Amy, to put a post up on various forums about town. We've also sometimes, which we certainly could do this year as well, we've reached out to NILCA. So that's a question, Amy, is you could reach out to NILCA and say, like, is this something that you would mind putting up as a splash on the city website? Of course, the website itself is kept updated, and like Amy said, you know, any of the department head meetings, you know, it's certainly brought up and discussed, so that at the city level, I think people are becoming more and more aware of what our cycle is and like when to jump in and have different things ready by. And some of it's like a bit of a push too, because they're sort of coming out of summer and we're like, yeah, but now get eligibility applications now.
Thank you.
What do we think about January in terms of our having a public presentation? Sometimes we've split by, for example, you know, housing and open space on one day and historic preservation on a different day, so that we have a balance of, you know, no more than 4 to 5 projects in a single time. And so if we split it into 2, right now our regular meeting day, I'm trying to pull up my calendar. Our regular meeting day in January would be Wednesday, the 10th. And so I wonder if we would want to have, for example, the one meeting on the 10th and one on the 11th, or would we want it to be the 10th and then the 17th? Like what works best for the committee?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Hey.
Well, in that case, I'll just remain silent. Madam Chairman, do you think we might want to wait to see the volume of applications that would then dictate
That's true.
how many times we'll meet?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we could do that too. Yeah, it's more that I want to get it on the calendar sooner rather than later, because folks need to know they have to be there. And it's good for us too, because it's sort of an off, we're scheduling an extra meeting in a month. So that can create its own pressure for a committee that like people are volunteering their time. Right. I'm just trying to name that. I know it's a lot to ask for 2 meetings in a month. Colleen, what were you saying?
I just, Mary, your hand was up, so I don't know if you wanted to take them or if it was an accident, but I was just gonna.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'd prefer the 10th and the 17th. And I think that if there's not that many, we could just do one, and not schedule anything for the other week. But I would really prefer to have as many things on a calendar that I can schedule around moving forward. So that would be my preference. But I think if it seems like it could all be done in one, then you just don't schedule something for that 17th one. So that would be my preference.
Okay.
I just doing it all in one night was too much, and I don't think it's really fair to.
Yeah, we were all exhausted
applicants.
by the end of that.
Yeah.
Okay, Mary.
Same. If there's not enough applications, then of course only one night, but I would think there will be enough applications. So I like the January 10 and 17.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, it's my preference as well, but I wanted to throw it out there. There's different ways we could do it. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about the calendar and the sort of workflow over the course of the year? Okay. Okay, we're going to move to the third piece. So the third agenda item says sharing information from the Fairfield Local Historic District and reviewing a draft of a possible homeowner historic home restoration program. So on Sunday, I walked Fairfield with 2 members of the local historic district, our only local historic district, Fairfield Ave. And we did an informal walk audit of just what is going on the street, right? Especially because these, the work that we can do from CPA in terms of public benefit is everything is public facing, right? So we were able to take a walk down the street, and with two very knowledgeable folks walking alongside myself, we were able to get, you know, an informal audit of just, you know, what are we seeing as the needs on the street? So I tabulated that afterwards. So out of the 51 houses that we did a walk audit of, 34% had significant porch repair or replacement that's needed. 35% needed extensive painting. 22% needed trim or fascia repair. 27% needed repair to a slate roof. 3% had asbestos shingle on them. And so that was sort of an open question of, you know, for those houses, you know, what does that mean? Is this a funding source that could be used for them to be kind of returned to a shingle that's a safer shingle to have on your house? 16% needed to have their like brick foundations repointed. About 20% were like solid. You walk by and look and say, nope, it all looks good. But there was a significant, that means 80% of the houses that we walked had significant exterior repair that was needed. Also, because we were walking down the street, you know, various folks that were outside of their house were sort of like, what are you doing? And came over and ended up having a number of informal conversations with us. And it was interesting hearing from folks, just sort of their comment, like a lot of folks they're proud of the properties that they own, even if they're in disrepair, right? They see the value of them. A lot of them are very knowledgeable about their homes. They can tell you, you know, who it was passed from generation to generation. They can tell you, you know, very specific historic preservation terms that I know your average person would not know what a gamble is. And also the challenges of trying to figure out how to upkeep their homes. And because I was walking with two people from the local historic district, I was also able to hear from them, you know, oh, we worked with this person on that porch because here was the issue there. Or this person came to us because the wooden siding really needed to be repaired, but they absolutely could not afford the cost of that. Here is where we feel like we're struggling. Do we just say no? You know, yes, you're supposed to keep your house historic, but we know that means then that you're not going to repair the shingles, and then you're going to get extensive damage to your home. Is that better for the district than to us say, okay, you can put vinyl siding on? So I think they feel very much, they're working often very closely with homeowners who are coming to them and explaining repairs that they want to do or work that they want to do. And they're trying to figure out with them what they can say yes to, and what also aligns with the mission of them being a local historic district. And I think it's not always easy. So I feel like I learned a lot by doing that walk. And I think it just made me more aware of just, you know, what are the needs in terms of that local historic district. So as we roll into looking at the historic application or the draft of the historic home restoration program today, I think I would like to hear concerns. I'd like us to hear what we're excited about. And then anything that sort of, what are the remaining pieces that we would need to lock down in order to feel like we would get to a place as a committee where we would be ready to vote on it. And then come up with a timeline, come up with a proposal. And I'm hoping that over the next few months, we get to a place where we're either saying, no, we don't want to do this, doesn't feel within our purview, or we don't want to move forward with it, or yes, we do, and we're ready to start moving it to city council subcommittees, maybe late November, early December. Do folks want me to share screen through the proposal one more time? Because I know that some folks weren't here last meeting. Do folks feel like they got a chance to look at the proposal and already talk about it, or just kind of want like a walkthrough?
I wouldn't mind the walkthrough, I have to be honest.
You got it. Okay. So right now, this document draft has gone through Alicia Zoller met with me about it. So did members of Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, the local historic district, and members of the Historic Commission. So we have started to sort of share it wider. Holyoke Preservation Trust has also seen it. Because I think it's really important to get a lot of different stakeholders involved as you're trying to figure out, you know, how does this new kind of program work? Okay, so initially we thought, you know, it's a new CPA program to assist property owners in local historic districts. Right now, there's only one. There are 2 other local historic districts in the city that are sort of in motion that, you know, may happen, where some folks are interested in creating a new district. But of course, you have to go through the process. It's a real process, and the homeowners within that have to accept becoming a local historic district. Right now, there is no funding to support you if you do become a local historic district. So I do think that could be interesting, is if other local historic districts do form in the city, and I hope they do. I think Springfield is 8. Then this would be a source of funding that would go beyond just our one to any of them. That's why local historic districts is plural there. And the idea is to help them with exterior painting and historic porch and door repairs. That may, from the walkthrough that we did, it may make sense to widen that, right? And to not just have it named as painting and porch and door repairs, but to make it wider in scope to like any exterior repair to an historic home. I think that's one of my questions after doing that walk with the local historic district commission. Okay, so the idea is owner occupied single family homes or owner occupied 2 to 3 family homes that are currently in an LHD or who join an existing or a single parcel local historic district. That's how Springfield does it. If a single house wants to have access to this funding, Springfield CPA says, great, work with the historic commission or the local historic district to become a single parcel local historic district. You can, and then you would have access to this funding. We certainly have single historic homes across the city, right? All across in every ward that absolutely, right, could defend its value as a single parcel local historic district and could go through that process. Homes built prior to 1940 and owned by the applicant for at least 1 year prior to the application date. Homeowner must be able to demonstrate tax compliance. And then if your house is pulled in the lottery, then your home will be vetted via a 3-person team to determine if it's eligible for an award. So the home must demonstrate structural integrity that justifies exterior work, and it must demonstrate architectural features in alignment with the historic character of its era or type. What kind of work is eligible? It's restricted to exterior projects only. You know, at this point, we were thinking maybe we would limit it in scope to just exterior painting and historic porch and door repairs. Maybe that becomes wider. And some interior work is permitted, but only if it's essential to the overall rehabilitation of exterior elements, like a hinge, right? Has both an exterior and interior element. Some prep work for painting may be allowed, but cannot exceed 10% of the total project cost. And if the exterior siding is too deteriorated to be painted, the work can only proceed if the siding is addressed. All work must be done in accordance with the standards put forth by the Department of the Interior. And then this was the size of the award piece. We're trying to figure out like what is the right eligibility scale. And it was interesting talking to Alicia Zoller about this. And when we look at, you know, can we make the award you know, thoughtfully generous in a way that it would be open to most people, but also feel realistic and appropriate, right? Like what's that balance, right? So we calculated it up from the AMI, the area median income, so that you could, if you know, got up to 200%, you know, AMI for the region, which is for a household of 4, 187 for, you could get $10,000. If you had income eligibility of 140% of the AMI, which is 131, for a family of 4, it would be 20. If it was up to 120%, which is 112 for family of 4, it could be up to the max amount, which is 30% or 30 grand. Which is as high as Springfield's go. That's where we're initially modeling it off of. The idea is that we would hold a lottery on a date and pull 4 addresses. And then the city inspector, the CPA administrator, that's an open question actually, based on my comments to the local historic district. They were like, well, we think we want to be involved. One of our members should be there because we know these properties intimately and should. So that was an interesting piece from their perspective, is like, maybe the CPA administrator needs to be there and maybe they don't. Maybe that's something that the local historic district takes on with the preservation consultant from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, where they review the historic eligibility of the house, they inspect the property, and then a written report is shared with the homeowner that serves as the basis of the scope of work. So it will say, here are the things that need to get done in this house that we see. And then they will obtain 2 quotes from a licensed contractor based on that report and the scope of work. Once they choose a contractor, the work can then proceed, right, with that consultant working with them to then inspect the work before it can be reimbursed. A pay by invoice program. There's reason for why that happens, but it does create complications for families who are like, I couldn't put up the initial deposit. So then what? And that came up with the local historic district. They were like, they're very concerned that there'd be so many folks who really needed it, but couldn't come up with anything as the initial deposit. But there are reasons for why that has to happen. And it largely has to be about the fact that it has to be work that the private homeowner is doing. Otherwise, things like insurance fall on the city, which can't happen. Or we fall underneath procurement laws, which would make no sense in a private scenario. So I do want to reach back out to Alicia Zoller to ask her how CDGB does that, or maybe someone here knows. It may just be that, you know, we're putting forward certain contractors that sort of know the program and are sort of willing to delay that initial deposit and, like, you know, accept it based on the fact that they know the funding is coming. That's a question for me. Okay, this piece I already talked about, I think. The Holyoke Preservation Trust is willing to be a resource for folks who want support. And it's actually not the Holyoke Historic Commission that would run trying to join an LHD or create a new one. It's actually the current local historic district that does that. So that's something that I need to shift in here. Houses are chosen by lottery. And then this is just more information on, like, what will we actually ask for, and we'll use the same process as the CDGB homeowners program does for what information is approved or required in order to potentially get funding. Okay, I'm gonna stop there because it's a lot. Okay, questions, thoughts?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Regarding, I guess, how do we know how much? Because technically we only have one historic district, right? And that means that only one portion of the city will be able to capitalize on that, even though the whole city will be technically paying into this. So do we know more or less how much that one part of the community is paying in with regards to taxes, right? So that way, because I know that later on in the future,
it's hard to pull it. Yeah, I've tried in the past, and the city's like, we can't pull it in that way. But I hear the argument that you're like, you're developing.
Right, because at the end of the day, yeah, especially a lot of the people in the lower wards, everyone is kind of paying into the pot, and not being able to capitalize or to tap into the pot is going to make some people feel uncomfortable about the pot overall. I mean, I'm with CPA. I fought for it, and I'm with it 110%. I just want to be able to still be able to fight for it with an argument that makes sense with constituents that are not going to be able to capitalize, that some other constituents will be able to.
Mhm.
I agree. Yeah, and we're talking about 100, so if we're doing 4 houses at up to 30,000, right? It would be $120,000 or less. Would be the overall cost of the program. Because some people that we pull, right, will only get 10,000, right? So if we pull 4 houses, right, then it would be 40,000, right? It would depend on, and the reason for doing that is because we wouldn't keep pulling up to the 120 because it's too many houses. It's like, it's such a labor intensive process to work with a homeowner to do this, that you can't pull like up to 120 and it's like 8 homes. Like, it would just be too much for our first year. Okay, I see Chris's hand, Nathan, Michael, and then Helene.
Somebody can go first, whatever. I'll just go. It with the commission, it's just boiled down to Fairfield Avenue, you know, the most exclusive address in Holyoke. They're getting in the funds. For the lower wards, there's nothing for us. I mean, plain and simple. Why are we going to give money to Fairfield when, you know, other wards can really utilize our assistance? I mean,
so my only answer to that initially is, I'm not against anything. It's just that I also am in support of this.
right.
Right. So like I've had, and Peter Palumbo is actually on the call, like I've had conversation with him about like down in Ward 1, like Hadley Falls Housing District is really interesting and they could use some support.
Yes.
I'm open to any program that would support historic homes, and I hope more come to us. I just think that we should start somewhere, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't support this one only because it's coming to us first.
All right.
Nathan?
I guess, I mean, Michael had his hand up first.
Who did? I'm sorry.
Michael?
Okay, all right, Michael.
Madam Chairman and fellow committee members, I was against this now and I was against it last year when we first talked about it. As we talked about it earlier, as the speakers this evening, it's not so much the people on Fairfield Avenue that we have to worry about, it's the people that don't live on Fairfield Avenue that we should be worried about. Remember, we're going to ask for their vote in a year or two to see if we're going to be in existence or if we're going to have our funds cut significantly. Well, wait till this hits the fan. You think they're going to be happy about with us? They're going to be furious. Just the public perception is awful, absolutely awful. Not now, not ever. We don't have the dollar amount of Springfield in our budget. If you think Amy's overworked now, have her go start processing the paperwork for just this account, just this activity. She's going to, it'll be a full-time job for her. Therefore, the cost of putting this program into the works is going to be expensive. Our administrative costs are going to go through the roof because Amy's going to have to spend a heck of a lot more time going through all these papers and make sure everybody's got the necessary paperwork. And then who's going to pay for the private consultant? And in fact, all the rest of the city, 95% of the homes in the city aren't going to be eligible. And the public perception of this is just terrible. Why should my taxes go to people on Fairfield Avenue or whoever belong to whoever the Hadley district is and wherever they are? What about the people in Elmwood or the other people of the Highlands or Churchill or Oakdale? Yes. They're going to say the same thing. And don't forget, we're going to ask for their vote. Now, when this hits
Michael, do you see an argument on the other side? Like, can you play devil's advocate?
For a small town city, Madam Chairman, this isn't Springfield. We don't have the budget. We don't have the administrative capacity. We don't have the funds to pay for the administrative capacity to administer this program. It's way out of our head. We've got more public projects for the public good that we've been doing an excellent job on. And to take this on is an absolute disaster. I'll never vote for it. It's not good for the city. We're not Springfield. We're not Boston. We're not Cambridge. We don't have their kind of money. We just don't. And the rest of the city is going to be furious. regardless if it's Fairfield or anywhere else, because the rest of you are just going to say the same thing. Why is my tax dollars, why can't I get what it's my money paying for it? It's as simple as that. And we want their vote in a year or two. Do you think they'd vote for us? You're dreaming. I'm against this program and I always will be.
Okay. I will. This is why, you know, we have conversations. I want everyone to be able to name where they're at and what they're thinking. I mean, a similar program currently exists under CDGB, but it's for folks who are, you know, needing it for income reasons. This is for folks who are in a local historic district, and it does look different. I agree with you. But also when you walk the street, there's a lot of folks who they're trying to keep an historic home going, but they don't have the capacity to do so. I think that is a real reality too, that I'm trying to be mindful of. If the committee doesn't want the program, we're not going to move forward with it. It is what it is. The committee is going to have to vote on it. All right, I hear Nathan next.
Oh, thank you. Was a little unclear about the sort of the condition once you get into this program. So if a home becomes a part of this program, is it gonna become a part of the local historic district, or can it stay outside of the local historic district? I mean, I know there can be single parcel, historical district. So I mean, I'm just asking, is it official? Does it become part of the local historic district or a one parcel historic district, or does not have to be after it gets into the program?
It depends on the house's situation. So houses that are near Fairfield can apply to become part of the Fairfield Local Historic District. And it doesn't even have to be adjacent. It doesn't have to be like you're one house over. You could be several blocks over and say, I want to become part of the greater Fairfield Housing Local Historic District, and go through the process of joining your house to it. So that's something that for sure could occur. And then houses that are beyond the scope of that neighborhood. Like I said, there's 2 local historic districts in motion now. If a house wants to become part of its own local historic district because they believe that it has historic value on its own, it certainly can do that.
Yeah, I think
that's how Springfield does it, because the opposite option, well, the other option is Springfield, that's what Springfield does, but the other option is that you could have them enter a preservation restriction. It's just different, right? Because the reality is that historic district already has restrictions on it, right? And because the goal here is not to just, individually, help individuals, but to support the health of a local historic district, right? Those houses are going to be there after those people have died. The goal is to have that district survive over time and hold on to its historic character, and currently is struggling to do so. So yeah, I think the other option is that you could say, go into this, fund if you will accept a preservation restriction. But that feels, I think, different as a process.
So, I mean, I'm gonna maybe talk a little bit critically. I think I'm very mixed about this. So, my experience briefly learning about historic district and specific in Northampton. I mean, well, I'll say something really strong opinion. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think the term low-income historic district or low-income historic house is a contradiction. Naturally, these historic districts. So, I mean, the usual regulation is the exterior that's visible to the public has to be renovated according to historic standards, sometimes using very exotic, historic materials or very difficult mechanisms or very intricate work that's much more expensive than what people usually do. So, like a historic district or historic building, to preserve it naturally favors people who have a lot of wealth and resources. And I mean, the way these programs roll out, even if you say, oh, it's eligible for everybody, I mean, there's quite a few people who's gonna, people who have more time and resources to apply and go through the complexity of these programs are gonna tend to be wealthier people with time on their hands or retirees. And the household, the income standard I'm looking at, I think that's sort of the maybe HUD or the federal standard they put out. That's sort of an aggregate of all the wealthy regions like Hampshire County, Hampden County. That's why the household income seems so high. I mean, you're talking about 6-figure household income, and so it's not really an accurate income reflection for city of Holyoke. So I mean, it's this hard question. So, I mean, arguably, even a single historic home that's well preserved can benefit the public. But then, I mean, if it's sort of a typical suburban historical home in a really remote area where nobody really visits but the homeowners only and their friends, I mean, how is that really benefiting the public? How visible is that? And you're basically using, a surcharge, a combination of the property tax surcharge and the state match to fund an individual home restoration, which tend to be very wealthy homeowners. I mean, just historic home as a nature. I know sometimes people who don't make a lot of income end up living in more historic homes, maybe not officially designated, but still historic homes. But I mean, that's also, I mean, it's kind of questionable. It's like, I mean, you either knowingly, I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a jerk, but if you knowingly or unknowingly accepted living in a luxury home, or maybe it wasn't a luxury home in the past, but now to keep it up to historic standard, it's a luxury home. It's your choice to live in a more luxury high-end home. And I mean, how proper is it for city to use the CPA fund and other types of public funds to benefit an arguably luxury lifestyle of an individual? I mean, I think it's just general. I've seen other cities, historic district, they tend to become millionaires rows, and that's just the nature of it. It just requires more resources. And yeah, I think I'm gonna stop. I mean, I don't want to rant on this, but I think I'm a little bit worried about this program, how it's gonna roll out, how it's gonna actually play out, and whether it's really the best use of limited CPA funding, and also whether there's enough staff capacity or even public's willingness to go through this kind of process. So thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Nathan. Helene?
I think folks have made really good points. And I do want to just thank Meg for the time and effort to go into this proposal, which I know it's not final, but to think through. I mean, this is just such an incredibly complicated process, and that might be the end of the decision in terms of it's just too much beef right now anyway. But it seems extremely like time consuming to have considered all these pieces, and we've talked about it before. I guess I would, I feel less excited about it. I don't know that I was ever really excited about it, but I just think there are just pieces of, in terms of the, going off the historic district parameter, that are just going to be too much at this moment for whatever reason. And I say that also knowing that I think that's kind of based in some ways not on total reality. Like, we don't know everybody's business and how people end up with a house and, all of these pieces. And so I do want to acknowledge that it's not just a given that if you live in this historic district, you're just extremely wealthy. However, I do think probably if you looked at the demographics, it would probably be more well-off aggregate compared to the rest of the city. And that just seems like not the area of energy and focus that seems best for CPA right now. If we're going to be expanding and doing other things, I would love to figure out more ways to have projects that really match and bring more money in the city. I feel like that's something that people have a lot of interest and buy-in as a focus, and that doesn't seem so much to be this project. I guess if we were to do it, I would be more in favor of having it be citywide, and then people would have to do the historic. If they weren't in a district, they'd have to agree to historic easement or whatever restriction, and they'd have to show that their home is historic. And that I think I think the concern about that then is that's really time consuming to figure out these houses that are in another neighborhood and whether they're historic enough. So I just, yeah, I'm feeling a lot of the negatives, and I don't know that they're all 100% based on data, but the perception, you know, is true and is just very palpable. And in terms of CPA and just as a entity, I feel like it just would be a really hard sell, and that we have so much that's good and so many places to put the money. So that's where I am at the moment, but I know it's like an incredible amount to like put together as a proposal. There's a lot that's really positive about it in terms of really helping families. And that maybe in the future something could come to be, but I'm not sure that I can see it in the next several months.
Okay. Israel Rivera.
So yeah, and again, yeah, Meg, thanks, and to whoever was working on the project overall. Like, I don't disagree. I think that I don't disagree that the people that are in these houses could use some of the CPA tax dollars to try to like kind of like mitigate some of the issues. Is just, to me, equitably across the whole city. How do we sell this, right? How do we do this so that everyone has an opportunity to tap into it? And if not, more portions of the city has an opportunity. Yes, Fairfield is the only part of the city that has a historic district. But if you go all the way down Northampton Street, there are a bunch of houses in Northampton Street that are in disrepair and that are over 100 years old probably. They would probably need to tap into it. There are houses in Elmwood. There are houses in I'm sure in the Fruit Bowl, there, as well as there is in the lower wards. If we could find a way to incorporate like a lot of other different sections of the community, then more than likely it would be an easier sell for us. But for right now, the way it is, I think it would be difficult, especially with the vote coming up within the next few years. And then the other piece I kind of want to highlight, that I'm realizing here and working in city government now, especially being an elected official, like a lot of the tax dollars that are actual tax dollars that are paid by residents go into the higher wards, or like the ward 4, 5, 6, 7, 3, with regards to spending tax dollars. When we're spending dollars on making improvements in wards 1, 2, sometimes 3 and 4, it usually comes from federal funding. So in a sense, the people that are paying taxes in those communities don't necessarily get to see their actual tax dollars at work in their community from the city. They usually are getting it from a CDBG grant or from a ARPA grant or from a federal source that's helping fix the street, fix the sidewalk, or police their neighborhood, versus actual city tax dollars that are going straight to their neighborhood where it's happening in the higher wards, more or less. So for me, it's like trying to see how we can like spread all of that out at the end of the day. But I'm not saying that the project is a terrible project. I just think that the way it is right now, it would be hard for me to support it.
Well, the difference I think between us and Springfield is that in general, because Springfield has 8 local historic districts, it feels spread throughout the city. So I think it's easy in this case to say, oh, this is for Fairfield, because it's our only current local historic district. So either, it makes sense to not help people who own historic homes, which we cannot do. Or we structure the program differently so that it's more about houses that will accept a preservation restriction. Or it is, as it is now, it's a local historic district. So it's like, as you enter a local historic district, and if you want to, you can enter your own house into a local historic district, then you have access to it. It's just that we only have one now, right? So I guess that's where I'm at in terms of, initially trying to figure out how to make it so that it felt like it was open across the city to other historic homes. That's how Springfield does it. And they've added a number of single parcel local historic districts as a result. But it may not be the right fit, and that's okay. Mary, did you have your hand up?
I did, but then everybody said everything that I agreed with already. I'd have to, first of all, reinforce that we thank you very much for doing all this detailed work. It's amazing. I really would like to see it. If we do something, I'd like to see it go to the whole city. I have been down to the Hadley Mills area, and I know a little bit about how those houses began and how they look now, and I hate to see them lost to disrepair, but I can't see targeting one neighborhood or another. Same thing on Oak Street. There's loads of old, really gorgeous older homes on Oak Street that went for lower prices because they're in such disrepair. And people there seem to work really hard to try to keep them up, but they don't necessarily match the historic preservation because it's too expensive. So, you don't want to lose them either. Anyway, there's places all over the city that you don't want to lose. It's part of the look of the city and our pride in the city. But, so therefore I'd like to see it expanded. And then I have to agree with Michael. How is Amy going to keep up with this? This is way bigger. It adds such a whole other chunk. So anyway, I'm just agreeing with everyone. And I do want to thank you for doing all this work. And I understand how we are, it was easier to start with Springfield's model, but it doesn't fit our city.
Well, I guess my next question is this. So does somebody want to work with me to figure out what will work? Or do we want to just throw it in the trash for now and say, we're just not touching it? Because that's my question, right? Like, this was always a draft. And we started from Springfield's model because that's what we have. That's what's worked in a community really successfully, right? In our region. So, but if that's not the right model, all right, then are we just saying no model would work for us to support historic homes in our city? It's part of CPA is historic preservation. And I don't think Springfield's alone in wanting to figure out how to support and hold on to historic homes that fall into disrepair. I don't know. Maybe we just say it's not something we can tackle. And, we'll take I don't know. Nathan and then Amy.
Yeah, Megan, I really want to thank you. I know I sounded a little harsh, pretty harsh, but this is a lot of work. And the fact that you put these details together allowed us to talk about it. I think, I know a lot of people here suggested like enabling across the city, whole city, and letting everybody become a historic, people more easily become historical district. Then one thing we really want to consider is becoming a local historic district, either a single parcel or part of a larger district. That's a state mandated the permanent obligations to maintain your home to historical standards. That's an extreme serious financial ask, right? When you enter into that. Part of the problem, Holyoke and many other formerly glorious industrial city deals with the lack of economic activity and the loss of population. 1920s, Holyoke had 60,000 people. And there was so much economic activity to justify all the markers of wealth we have seen, like the Victory Theater. The problem with these historical districts, properties, buildings in general is as long as the wealth that is needed to upkeep these buildings are there is great. Otherwise, it's just law of physics. These naturally start decay without the economic resources and energy and the materials that are needed to maintain these can come into play. So it's, the state historical district law, I think it allows somebody to apply for certificate of hardship when they're doing a renovation in a historical home. So there are some ways, but the historical commission is their discretion and their jurisdiction decide whether somebody applies for a certificate, somebody's under a certificate of hardship, or they have to comply with the full requirement. So it's not like guaranteed process. So I think if we want to talk about this sort of enabling more historical preservation and in a way mandating it, depending on how we implement the program, we have to be very careful, I think, in considering the consequences, because you don't have, it's not, so this one-time boost to people's restoration will help them one time. But at some point, 10 years, 20 years down the road, when you need to maintain your building again, they have to make sure that they can have another source of funding to keep it up to the historical standard. So I mean, it's painful, but maybe there's a way to sort of do a historical restoration light. That sounds terrible, but maybe there's a way to kind of encourage people to restore and maintain our homes to a certain standard, but not to the exacting and expensive standard that's required by typical historical restoration regulations. I think it's just a hard question of, do we have enough staff, do we have enough budget to support this program from the government side, and also is there enough economic strength from the public side to continually maintain their homes? Thank you.
Amy, Madam Chairman, Amy, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I also saw that Chris had his hand up. So since he's on the committee, I don't know, maybe he should speak first.
No, just reiterating what Nathan said.
Oh,
I think you just need to look at the lower wards. Plain and simple. That's all.
Yeah, I just
Do you have
wanted
any
to-
ideas about how we would do that, Chris? How would we do that?
Simple, simplicity, the age of the house. No lottery, nothing. Well, yes, a lottery, but the age of the house. Make it simplicity. Doesn't have to be a ward, doesn't have to be where we live. Plain and simple. Your house is 100 years old, you're in.
Oh, so you would make it just, rather than make it about a local historic district, you would say there's just no restrictions on it.
Yes.
Is that okay? So initially, the reason why I went this route was because folks had named that they felt really strongly that the committee could only consider funding something if there was due diligence and protections for the taxpayer connected to restrictions.
Yes.
But you're saying the way that you do it is that you just don't have restrictions.
Nothing.
You just open
Make
it up
it-
to anyone based on
right.
that house, and you don't attach any forward
There's no Fairfield.
restrictions on it.
There's nothing. 100-year-old house, you're in the lottery. Everyone is available.
I mean, if the committee is fine with that, I just thought they weren't.
I don't know.
I'm not attached to local historic districts as the only historic thing in the city.
We don't have,
Like
but we
when
only
I
have
initially
what-
started this conversation, I brought up Macris. That was how I started this. I brought up Macris and I said, look at all of the historic properties across the city.
we have one historic district, the wealthiest historic district of the city. That's all.
Is that true of other folks? So Chris has said that he thinks that he would feel more comfortable if there were just no restrictions on it, so that it wouldn't be about a local historic district, it would be any historic home. I just thought I had been told clearly by the committee that that wasn't something people were comfortable with. But if that's something that people are comfortable with, then that is another way forward. Again, this is a draft. I'm just trying to get feedback.
I think I appreciate Chris's idea, but I think there's some challenge to the proposal because, I mean, it's public funds that's used for public benefits. So historical districts tend to be more visible areas. But if you're talking about, let's say there's a low income home in a very remote area of Holyoke, that's 100 years old, like nobody else except for the homeowners is gonna be able to look at it and enjoy the property that was restored using public funds. That's one thing. And what was the other thing? I mean, I would think Amy can answer this, I think, about if we are gonna use CPA funds under the title of historical restoration or preservation, I'm guessing there are some stipulations, maybe the state law requires on what kind of restoration or what level of restoration that needs to be done for the properties in question. And I mean, that comes again down to historical restoration, expensive to do and maintain, and somebody, whether the homeowner or public, perpetually, somebody gotta have the economic power and the resources to continue upkeep these properties. It's sometimes just harsh math, Do we have the money to keep doing it or not, So, thank you.
What do other people think? Amy?
I'd like to,
Can I speak?
Yes.
Okay. All right, yeah, I really, as I have expressed to Meg as well, and agree with what Mike said, that it really will dramatically add to my responsibilities, which I have already ballooned over the years with the number of projects doubling since I started. I mean, unless it's really something that somebody else through this preservation group would take on. You see, one thing people may not realize is that even when a project is a lower dollar amount award, it can be just as complicated and labor intensive as a more, higher award. Like and this has been my experience, and especially when you have people who are, not very familiar with the whole process. So it can be like, I can sometimes spend all day just trying to help one grantee with sorting things out with disbursements and so forth and paperwork. So I am very wary about this. I do remember, in terms of the historic district versus not historic district, that Stuart Saganor of the CP Coalition did say that, he said in general that home ownership is the trickiest area to get into for CPA, for the reasons that people are talking about. But also, if you are going to do it, it would be probably best to stick to a historic district. That's what he had said, I guess, based on what Meg was saying before. But yeah, I am very uneasy about taking all this on in addition to all the other work I'm doing.
Okay. Well, it doesn't seem like there's any appetite to continue with the conversation, and that's okay. People have named that they don't want to pursue it. It sounds also like we don't want to continue talking about other ways to do it. Folks just want the conversation to stop, and that's okay. We can, I think, move on. I'm glad for the feedback. And thank you, everyone, for sharing your perspectives and where you're at. And I think that the last piece that I want to say about my place is just to name that this was something that had come up in a number of different places that folks wanted us to pursue this conversation. So my goal in all of this was only to make sure that we did have the conversation. And I was going on a basis of like, how would we make Springfield's model work if we could? And so everything that I created was only based on what the CPC and the local historic district, the historic commission, like what different people were saying they were interested in and having created. But I hear the uneasiness too. I think we're in a political climate that feels really uncomfortable. And I think as a committee, we feel it in a way that doesn't feel great in terms of a fear around how our actions are going to be perceived. Hi, Isabel. How was tennis?
Good. Madam Chairman, ask her opinion.
She's 4, Michael.
Oh, God. Like mother, like daughter.
She's my mini me. She's getting the freckles now. I do think that I want to figure out how to support historic homes in the city, but I don't know what that looks like. I really don't. And I know that we're right now Hi, Isabel. The scoop. We're supporting historic preservation through a lot of municipal projects and also through some private developer projects. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how that shifts over time. If those are the only historic projects that we're going to take on, or if we are going to think again about historic homes at some point. Okay, I'm going to move to the next agenda item, which is sharing feedback on the preservation plan. Last time we heard from Michael and also Mary. And so I wanted to see if anyone else that had a chance to talk with their board or commissioner group about the preservation plan. And if they wanted to share anything about how it could be updated, or if it looked like the priorities looked in line with their, your cross section of the city.
I shared about park last time.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Okay. So Helene already shared. And Nathan sounded like planning board. It just didn't feel like a great fit to be able to look at it. I know that planning board is very busy.
I think though, I mean, yeah, I shared your email. We shared it with the whole board via our staff, and no feedback. I think, looking at what sort of the board members' interests are currently, I think maybe something that might overlap is creating more affordable and flexible types of housing. And I don't know if that overlaps with CPA, but there's a lot of talk about tiny homes and improving zoning and ADUs. So if I think that's probably one of the goals. If you can argue really that CPA has affordable housing, and I know it does, but I think maybe affordable housing and more flexible ways to create that. Maybe even affordable housing you can own, or various people can own. Maybe that's a common goal between the two bodies. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to share anything about the preservation plan, or do you feel like we've sort of done our check-ins and things are good moving forward? Okay. Mary, yes.
What will happen then? Will there be changes made to what's listed as our plan, our official plan? Or do we have to go to the city council for any changes? For example, Helene asked to change wording, and I asked to change numbers, and I asked to add something in. And I don't know if we heard from historic yet, but what will happen with those details? Does it have to go back to city council to be reapproved?
It doesn't have to be approved through city council. It's something that was created independent of city council. Although we, clearly could, through a communication order, could share, here's where we're at, here are a few changes that we've made. How to make the changes is an interesting question. Oh, did Amy just disappear? Oh, she did. Okay, well, hopefully she's back on soon. I think one of the issues we ran into is that what we have effectively is a PDF. And so how do you edit it? So it's easy to make a document that's just an addendum, that's like a single page, like this has been changed to this has been changed to that. It's just not that user friendly. So we can certainly do that. And then we also have to consider, after speaking with Amy, how can the document itself actually be edited just to make it more user friendly?
Okay. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. When I watched the tape to do the minutes, I noticed I left something huge out. I had heard from Megan that you had wanted more education. I just wanted to clarify on 61A arrangements. Any person putting their land in a 61A tax reduction arrangement does so knowing that when they want to end that arrangement, that the city council is notified that the city of Holyoke has first dibs or right of refusal on purchasing the land. So that is always part of the arrangement. Anyway, just for everybody's information. That 61A.
Some of the suggestions that you had made, I think, are really technical, and maybe it will be important for for you and Amy to connect around like how to properly communicate that in the preservation plan.
Okay.
Michael?
Madam Chairman, Mary and Helene, I'm not so sure we have the political authority to make these changes on city land or city charter or city regulations. I think, I'm not so sure we have that authority. I think this is something either the mayor and the city council must decide on. This is more of a, what do you want to do with the city kind of thing? That's way beyond the scope of our committee. It's a good idea, Mary. I'm not faulting it, or Helene, but I would either check with the lawyer or, I don't know, run it by the mayor's office or something, but I don't feel comfortable making these kinds of changes on our own, because I don't think we have the authority to do so, Mayor.
Okay, making changes to the CPA plan? Is that
Yeah,
what you
with
mean?
with their terminology, but we're also changing how the city of Holyoke.
But it isn't changing how the city of Holyoke operates. It's actually reinforcing it. All my group wanted was that we would, encourage the use of all of the aspects of the 61A agreement. So it really doesn't change anything. And I'm not sure how Helene came into it, but okay, maybe that was something there too. I don't know.
Well, that's okay. No, I just felt a little uneasy that we may be getting out of our scope of responsibilities. That's all, Mary.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Oh, Amy, you're back. One of the questions was around, since the original preservation plan was a PDF, how do we edit it? Or do we just create a document that's an addendum, or is there a way to actually edit the document?
I don't have the ability to edit it because we don't have that type of software anymore. The city's not providing it. So, and I think in the past there was talk about creating an addendum, and I've learned from other CPA communities that that's often how they handle it.
Okay. So Amy, do you think it makes sense to take the notes from the folks who have shared? Because some folks have provided really specific information around things that they think should be amended in addendum, and then craft one.
Okay, I didn't know that this was something that I was taking on, but because we hadn't really talked about it, but yeah, I mean, I suppose like if people could write up their portion, and I can try to go through it and see that it looks seamless or something. And then post that on the website.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Well,
that Mary sent
think
hers already to you and me. Sorry, Mary.
Well, I think it'll be, like, for example, on numbers, you're just changing the numbers so that to be updated. So that would be, in an addendum, that would be okay. But in the example of using the word handicapped, I don't know how you would put that in an addendum. I guess actually I should be asking Helene about that, but never mind. Never mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
I
good
mean,
point,
I think
so.
this is a technical logistical issue that maybe could be worked out and figure out too, like, this isn't also my main priority for Amy. I mean, there's so much going on. So, and it, it's fine to ask. I mean, it does seem like it's our kind of planning document. So we're putting input, we're updating it because it's older. If other parts of the city want to weigh in, as Mega's been saying, let's get people's input. But there's something like, to me, controlling or like authoritative about it, right? It's just sort of a vision plan, but
Planning guidance.
yeah, it's guidance, but it's, I wouldn't go into court with it and be like, well, on this page of this document, it says we must do this. And there's many things I will go to court with that are more than guidance. So I am, though, massively concerned that the city of Holyoke doesn't have software that's appropriate to like edit PDFs. I mean, that's really not good because that seems like so much more work for staff. And anyway, so which is certainly not Amy's fault at all, but that would be that's that's on my radar now. And just wanting to have people who are doing this administrative work to have like reasonable tools to do it. So.
What's the software that you don't have, Amy, that you would need to
Well,
have?
it's, I think it's Acrobat, and it is an additional cost. It's so the way that it works, I believe, is, basically CPA would have to get a license and pay for that. So it's not that we can't, I don't think it's that we can't do it, but I have to say, I think in the past, it was given to me without, I know when I started, I was able to access it without us having to pay for it. So there must have been some kind of change down the road. They changed the IT department and so forth. So now, everybody's sort of on their own, I guess, with some of these things.
Nathan?
I mean, can I chime in because of my IT experience, work experience in the past? I mean, typical workflow is, so yeah, Acrobat is used for editing PDF, but it's not really ideal workflow. Typically, you'd create a source document using any kind of publishing program, Word, Microsoft Publisher, and so on. And then you'd use their export to PDF feature or print to PDF feature to generate the PDF. It's a common practice that PDF is only for publishing, it's not for editing. So when you finalize a version for publishing, you convert to PDF, but you very rarely directly edit like a PDF plan. So, I mean, Acrobat is super expensive, that is true. And it can be helpful to have it, especially if you get, some kind of ancient PDF document, and you just need to extract a particular page out of it to use it in another document. It's very helpful, but I think what we kind of need to do in this case is figure out where the source document for the plan is, make edits if needed, and then export it out to PDF using its typically built-in export to PDF feature. So I think as long as we can find the source document, it's a lot easier.
That's the question is
yeah.
can we find
Yeah.
the source document? So like reaching back out to the original creator of the document and saying, the committee needs the source document, not just the PDF version of it. I wonder if that's possible.
Yeah, I know who created it. It was Roberta Cameron, who's the Somerville CPA staff person. And I'd have to look through my emails and ask her, but I don't know if she still has, that. She might, she might, so we'll see.
Okay, yeah, well, we'll go from there. All right, we're gonna move to number 5. So the Holyoke merry-go-round, just to update you from our last conversation. So last time we talked about the Holyoke merry-go-round, we learned that there was an issue with their stirrups are now out of code. They want to quickly get their stirrups back to the right code or to the new code. And they were hoping to use the remainder of their award to be able to do a different kind of work, which was the stirrups, right? Not just for the 4 original horses that were in the contract to restore, but for other horses as well. And then effectively the conversation also included information that they were hoping to get them up to code like now, right? Versus going through the regular application process, which would mean they wouldn't actually have any released funding likely until July or August. So almost a year away. And so Sue has worked on creating an emergency application for the stirrups. Now, the other piece is initially we had not put the $6,000 forward to City Council from the original award because the feeling, talking with Amy, was just that it's a lot of work to create a new order, push it through City Council, go to 3 different meetings, follow back through. And it's hard because when we work with applicants, they're doing good work. There's no one we're not working with who's not doing good work, right? And we want to support them. But it's also happened now many times, right? Where people are like, actually, could I use this for this? I still have this much left in my award. Could I use it for this? And so we keep going back to this process with people. And it is like to folks who are talking about like the issues with Amy's hours or the stuff that I'm doing on the side for the committee. It's a lot of hours, right? So I think in general, it would be good for the committee to, as hard as it is, get to a place of either being more comfortable with emergency applications or be okay saying to folks, you have to just, return the rest of the funding because it's outside the scope of your work. Only because if, 3 out of the 7 applicants do it a year, it does create work, right, for the committee. So just to put that out there for, why we were initially going back and forth on if we would go to the City Council for that or not, it's just because it's, it's extra, time and hours. And either we have to find a way to get contract terms to be wider, so there's more leeway, or we have to be willing to work with applicants a little differently. So Sue was here to talk about the emergency application and for us to review and consider it. So Sue, I'll turn it over to you.
Amy had a question. Amy, the paperwork that you sent me, that was it that I filled out. You were looking for the emergency application. Did I fill the wrong one out?
I thought that I had sent you 2 documents. One is the cover sheet and the rest was the regular application. I'm just going back through my email to see if I sent that to you. If I only sent you the cover sheet, that was a mistake.
It's on July 7th. And there was a cover sheet, but I looked into the application.
Yes, I found it. I did send you the cover sheet and the application on July 27th. I'll forward it to you again now. So it has more instructions with describing the budget, just like you did for your last application. Did you get that sheet too with the instructions?
On the original email I did. I'm trying to see your new one come in. Oh, it just came in now. Okay.
Yeah, it has all the instructions listed about the different sections to include.
Okay. So in what I've sent to you, then I don't have enough information. Is that?
Well, usually, yeah, for the emergency application, it is still the same format of an application, but it's just that you're doing it, based on the need when the need occurs rather than the regular grant cycle. But we still do need all the budget information and all those details. And also I go back to that a lot in terms of developing a contract and so forth, and putting forth recommendations to city council. So yeah, we still need those other listed details in the application.
Okay.
Sue, what is the timeline? When do you need approval? Are we holding you up? Are we holding you up?
In the sense of, we were told that these stirrups are not safe, is what's holding us up. So we just felt the need that we really need to get on these stirrups and get them on the horses. They passed us. The state inspector came in and passed us, but he told us that at this point, those stirrups are no longer up to code and children have been getting hurt with that particular type of stirrup. So we're in the process of putting the new ones on.
So but as we speak, the city is liable. Like if some little boy or girl.
City's not liable. The city does not own the merry-go-round. So there's no liability. The liability is only underneath the Friends of the Merry-Go-Round. That was one of the things long ago when we first applied for this grant. We're not under the city at all.
Okay. Well,
we're not profit.
Okay. Nonetheless, you people are liable. Do you have liability insurance?
Yes.
Does the corporation have liability insurance?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you don't rather not use it. I don't know what the big deal is on this. We're not talking about a new coffee machine or a microwave that's outside the scope of the responsibilities of the contract. You were taken by surprise by a new regulation that you weren't aware of. You can't be held. I don't know why we're putting you through this, quite frankly, and just spend the money as it should be by virtue of the state inspector and the new regulations. You have no way of knowing about this when you first composed your contract and when applied for the funds. You were fortunate enough to have all these people step up and donate their time and talent to solve this problem, which must be solved. And if you have existing money in your wallet still from the original contract, we'll use it. I mean, like I said, you're not buying a microwave, or you're not buying a car. You're taking the money and using it on the horses as it must by federal regulation, by state regulation. I don't know why we're putting you through this, quite frankly, because I don't think it's necessary. I think it's well within the scope of the responsibilities of the contract, and your intent is to honor the contract. I don't agree with what we're putting you through whatsoever.
So Michael, just to give a little bit of backstory. So beyond the scope of what money is left in the grant, they want more funding to be able to complete all the stirrups. So the piece that Amy is saying that we're just missing primarily is the budget. Because you have here, so like the original amount that was in the first grant plus the emergency application that you put in, it comes to 27,500 in
That-
total.
Yeah, when I came last month, I was really only asking for that extra, the 6,390, but when you asked me to put in the emergency, that's when I said, well, am I putting in the whole 30,000 or 27,000? Yeah.
Well, Madam
So-
Chairman, I'm confused. I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was the $6,923 that you have in your wallet.
It
And that's- and you
originally,
wanted- Yeah, and you wanted to use that for the stirrups.
yes.
Okay, this new amount, I'm simply, I wasn't aware of that.
The
So
new one,
there's
the new
two
one
things
actually,
in the agenda.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
There's
sorry,
on
go
the
ahead.
agenda, I'm sorry. On the agenda, there's two, I created two applications on the agenda, one for the original 6,300, because that's what we were asking, if we could just use that. And then Amy and Megan, and I realized just how much time you put into it. Thank you so much for all the emails you sent back and forth to me. Asked me if I wanted to go for the emergency application. So I did the second one for the emergency, which would come up to 27,500. But
Okay,
I mean, I can fill out more if you think that it's feasible, but if you don't, I do understand totally. We really,
Well, I wonder if it makes sense for you to bring an emergency application for the total amount, for the
that would be the total amount.
500. Our next meeting is September 13th. If you brought a full emergency application with the budget, the September 13th meeting, then we could vote on it in that meeting. Would that meet your timeline?
We have approved, and this was the other thing I wanted to make sure you all knew up front too. We have approved the original half to be done. We used the funds from last year's golf tournament, and we had been trying to put those in a separate account because we also just got a grant from ARPA in order to redo both our bathrooms, and we wanted the 20,000 aside because there's a possibility that within the walls, there's issues because we've had leakage issues within that area. So that was all my questions. I was like, my goodness gracious, I'm going to make this more complicated than it needs to be. If we've already approved it, I'm not sure if I can ask you for that money back. So I may only be asking you for the 15,000, which would be the second half of the money. And that is something that we haven't approved yet. We've approved up to the first half of the horses. Did I
Okay.
explain that well? I think.
So then would you want to bring that back to your board and come up with a budget and then bring us a full emergency application on September 13th with whatever that amount is that you need once you sort of, move those pieces around and figure out like exactly what you need?
Do you feel that I could ask for the money that we've already spent? Because if you do, then it's the 27.5. But if we've already approved the 15 and that's just because we did and we had it, and even though we were going to try to use it for something else, then it would be, something different, a different.
Sue, well, do all the activities you're referring to, they're all CPA approved, they're all in the theme and the philosophy of CPA.
I don't think the bathroom would be. The bathroom's part of the building, not part of the merry-go-round. So that's
Okay,
why that came under ARPA funds, not under
Okay, ARPA
CPA funds.
Okay, all right, no, all right. The rest of it does.
Yes, the stirrups would, yes.
Oh, well, ask for it then if you need it. I don't think anybody here would vote against it, quite frankly.
I think my question just was because we've already approved the spending of it, can we still ask to get that back? I didn't know if that was ethical or right or,
Oh, God.
You're saying because you've already approved to spend $15,000 from the golf tournament budget on it, can you
That
then
we-
ask for CPA funding now?
Yeah, to replace that 15,000. I didn't know what to.
I don't
to
know.
think. Yeah, that's the way I felt.
Yeah, I don't know.
Amy, could you ask that guy from Boston? What's his name? The guy from Boston.
His name is Stuart Saganor. I'm not sure I really understand, sorry, the part about the 15,000, but I just wanted to say that I really agree with what Meg was saying about when an applicant, then says, oh, I've got this extra money, can I use it for something else? that we just have to be mindful about that, because we have to remember that everything that we award is approved by city council, and we describe what that project is, city council approves it. So, and then that goes into the contract, which you subcommittee review. So if we then say, oh yeah, sure. I mean, I would love to do that. I think it's great, doing the stirrups, but the point is that that wouldn't be really acceptable. Even our city solicitor would object, because it's not the actual project that was approved by city council. So that's just the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, and we did receive word that you told me that he did object to it. He said, no, it would have to be revisited again with the city council.
There's your answer. No, I didn't know that. So there's your answer. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike. I wish I had told you that up front.
No, that's all right. No problem.
So come back with an application for half of the stirrups, since we've already paid for half. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean,
That's okay. We're
Or get an
appreciative.
opinion about that, or yeah, that, because I mean, what you're describing is that money was actually meant for something else, and you had an emergency, and then you're trying to kind of like,
yes,
like make sure kids are safe. So I feel like the fact that you've done that, I don't know why the board can't make a different vote and say, okay, we want to actually
I think
because we have another funding.
Whatever your board said.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
I agree with what Helene said. I think it depends on what your board said. I think your board would have to vote again. So Helene, can you repeat what you said?
Sure. Just that, that I understand the reason that you all voted to use the golf tournament money totally makes sense. But if you have this other stream of funding that could go to the stirrups, which CPA luckily is, and we're not nickel and diamond yet, like we're pretty interested in figuring out how to get this to you, that if your board just voted to say, okay, well, now we have this other stream of money, so we're going to sort of remove that because we know that there's this other application we can put in that could cover the whole thing. And then you come to us, I wouldn't have a problem with it. So that just, because it's internal to you all, like you were, trying to figure out how to maximize what you have to do all these really great things with the project. So that would be something to potentially go to the board to say, we have this other stream of money through CPA that could, I will say seems very likely to fund the whole thing and would do it by emergency. So maybe we change where that money we've already allocated goes. I don't know if that would be an issue internally with your board, but I wouldn't have I don't see that as a problem on our end for you to make that change.
I'm sure that they would be okay with that, because I know that was the initial intent, was to put that money in an account so that when they came in to try to start, when they started tearing down all the 2 bathrooms and found any issues in the wall, which we're pretty sure that there's something in there due to the different leaking and things that have happened over the years. And they haven't been touched in the 30 years that building was built. So there's a good chance there's going to be more than what we could actually put in for ARPA funds, because we just put in whatever the bid was that came through to us, knowing that we could open the walls and have worse going on in there. So I don't think they have a problem. I just wasn't sure if we could ethically ask for monies that we had already agreed to spend of our own money. So.
Well, it's a good question, a good thought, and appreciate, but I just, on our end, I think there's interest in getting the funds, and it just seems like that's money that you could use for something else, like making sure the bathrooms are okay. If the walls get opened up, that make that a function, like that. It's just, we want to help maximize what people are getting in terms of other sources through what we're doing, so that, it's overall better. So it's a thoughtful question, but I don't have a problem with it. If you guys decide we're going to do something different with our money and we're changing it, and then here's the budget, here's the application.
Yeah, I just have a question for Sue, because it could be kind of complicated from an accounting point of view. Like, is the money that your board decided to, that stream of money, has a vendor already been paid for it, the work?
I know it was approved by us. I don't have that access. I'm not sure if the payment has already gone through or not. I would say it
Okay,
might have.
all I was gonna
lean
say
on the
is-
side of yes.
All I was going to say is, as long as you, if this does get approved, if you have all the documentation to show that the vendor was paid, you have the invoices and the, copies of canceled checks and everything, then it should still work. Yeah.
I'm sure we do, because we have Maureen Costello on our site and she's amazing. I'm writing that down to make sure that I have it with me. So add that to the application, the copies of canceled checks.
No, I don't think you need that at this point. This is just, you should just follow the questions in the application. You don't have to mention that at all. Just, say what your total request is and how you would use the funds, follow the different prompts in the application. Yeah.
I have to say you are an amazing board, because I've listened to you tonight and everything you're doing, and God bless you, because Holyoke needs you. Maryground needs you.
Thank you so much, Sue. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll get that in as quickly as I can.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, moving to 6. So just updates on projects and updates from you, Amy.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of different things that I do, so I'll just give you an idea. Just recently, the full disbursement for the Wisteria Hearst repainting project was transferred through an internal transfer. So I just reminded Megan about the final report on that. Let's see. Also, the City Hall basement project was completed, and there were some, we got the final report on that, and there were some great pictures. I don't know if you saw them, that I think I emailed people about it. I posted that on Facebook, and there was a lot of positive reaction to that. People really care about the history of Holyoke and seeing, care put into that. I've also been working closely with the auditor's office and the budget consultant, the city auditor's department, on setting up separate CPA accounts for each of the categories: historic, open and rec space, and housing, and then admin as a separate one, and the general reserve and fund balance as another one, so that we can have more accurate information from the city Munis system on the documentation of the different disbursements over time, and it also is very helpful for reporting to the Department of Revenue to have that. So that's kind of an ongoing process. I got an update from the Wayfinders project. I don't know if you remember, it was originally called the Library Commons 2 housing project. Well, they're now called the Essex Village, apparently. And the different managers have changed over several times, but there's an associate person now named Ben Merker. And I just asked, where are they with this? Because, they already had asked for an extension, and we're getting, it's getting closer towards 2025. So they still have a funding gap, and they're about 50% behind schedule. They're applying for more funding, and they now hope to start work the fourth quarter of 2024. So I asked them if they think they can still meet their deadline to finish the project by the end of December 2025. And they said they believe they can. So that's an update on that project. And then the stained glass 80,000 award has also, Chris Baker of the Department of the DPW also got their disbursement for the full amount, just under 80,000. And we got a report on that as well, which I'll be able to share later. So that it's interesting. Some of these projects require an internal transfer, which can be kind of complicated, because I'm always trying to back everything up with, proof that it was paid, and that, I see that documented in Munis. And so there's a lot of paperwork involved in it, and a lot of back and forth. The Miracle League, we recently, I know Meg has some more updates about them if she wants to share, I don't know. But the CPA sign, she just sent that, Carrie Parsons, and they want to do a nice sign that will not be on a fence, but will be fixed to the ground. And it's their regular sign. So it'll, at the bottom would mention, acknowledgement for CPA. I noticed they didn't use the logo that I had sent them, so I was curious about that. And they want a logo and like a certain resolution that I don't really know how to do, but I'm trying to find out. Let's see. Yeah, and so pretty soon I'll be writing up summaries on each of the FY23 projects for the Department of Revenue website. That's something that has to happen every year by September 15th. You know, they need, and you know, there's certain fields that have to be completed online, and all CPA communities have to do that. And I guess you all saw the CP Coalition email that was sent. That unfortunately the state match budget was not yet approved. The CPA funding was dropped from the FY24 state budget, but they're still working on that. So they think, at least at this point, they expect a 20% match. It's good that that's what I arrived on in the proposed budget, was to play it conservative, but you know, they're still working and you know, lobbying to see if more can.
What happened last year too? Last year they dropped it from the state budget, and then in the supplemental budget,
Right.
additional amount was put into CPA. So you just don't know, right? Like,
Yeah.
to Amy's point, it was important for us to be conservative on what we thought the state match would be this year, because we had sort of gotten the heads up through the CPA coalition, like through the group that Stuart Saginaw leads, that we should use 20% and should be conservative. But that doesn't mean a supplemental budget won't go through like it did last year.
Right, but it just means that it can't be used in the next fiscal year because of the timing of city council approving, or it might be, I guess, if I don't know.
Last year we did an amendment to the budget and we were able to.
Yeah, if there's still time to do an amendment, it might be possible. So that's all I have to share.
Amy, did you say anything about the MIFA contract and the hiccup that we had?
Well, I think that's completed at this point. I don't know. There's been so much back and forth. I'd have to look, and I was just away for a week on vacation, so I'm still kind of catching up with everything. But I believe that it was signed, and that Don Sanders is asking me to call him about the disbursement process. So
Yes.
I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah, there was a small
I know
hiccup
it is-
with the contract. I don't know if you want to name what it was.
Oh yeah, there was just literally the suite number was incorrect for the MIFA location. I don't know why that wasn't caught earlier, but so I thought it would be best, yeah, like let's just redo this and make it correct, you know, and circulate it again. So, and I believe everybody has signed it. I can look.
I'm not sure if everyone has signed it yet, but I believe you circulated it. So we're on the cusp of being completed with the MIFA contract, but there was that hiccup that caused us to make some edits and recirculate. And Amy, did you end up naming Evergreen in the contract when you made that last shift?
Yeah, it is. And actually it is completely signed and executed. So that is finally done.
Woo. Okay. Exciting stuff. All right. And then the last update to Amy's point about the Miracle League playground next to Kennedy Park playground. There was an issue with one part that was still back ordered. It was like one of the spinning features in the playground, and so they're waiting to get that in. And then I guess they discovered that there was one part that also either had been damaged or needed to be reordered. And so they're waiting on 2 of the playground elements. And there has been some back and forth. Helene, maybe you can give some more info to this, that maybe they would sort of just have a grand opening, even if 1 or 2 elements were not fully in place, or if they would just, you know, wait for those pieces and then have a grand opening in maybe September, but just because parts can be back ordered for some amount of time. But that's sort of what's delaying the playground from opening. Okay. Okay. Any questions there? Okay. Anything under other? Anything anyone else wants to bring up? I do want to name that in the next meeting, we'll be voting for 23-24 roles. So we'll be revoting for chair, vice chair, and secretary. So just keep that in mind if you're interested in stepping into one of those roles, or if you're currently in that role and want to continue being in that role. Folks can be in that in roles, I believe, for up to 3 years, although I'll double check. I don't know if anything beyond the chair is named, but the chair is named. But I'll check the bylaws one more time and send that out. But that's something that we'll start the next meeting with. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about wanting to step into one of those roles for the next year. And our next meeting will be in September, the second Wednesday of September, which is the 13th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
All right, anything else before we adjourn? Okay, thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.